Good morning, everybody. This is Professor Kyunghee Pyun, and I am recording for Unit 6, Joseon Dynasty of Korea. So you are almost at the end of a long historical period of Korea, and Joseon Dynasty lasted about 500 years. During the same time, Japan, for example, it actually started with Muromachi, Momoyama, and Edo. So Japan went through 3 different dynasties. And then in Chinese case, there were 2 dynasties, Ming Dynasty and Qing Dynasty. But in Korean Peninsula, Joseon Dynasty lasted for about 500 years. And the reason that Japan and China had 2 or 3 dynasties is because Japan invaded the Korean Peninsula in the middle of toward the end of 16th century, and then Ming sent army in order to help Joseon. And during the 7 years of war called the Imjin War, Ming Dynasty eventually collapsed, and then Momoyama period also ended. And then in both countries of Japan and China, they started new dynasties. But Joseon, on the other hand, they remained same without any change of dynasty. So in Joseon Dynasty, the most important characteristic that you have to remember is Shilhak. Shilhak means practical learning. There is an invention of a Korean alphabet called Hangul. Hangul is the name of a Korean alphabet system. And then in the late Joseon Dynasty, we are going to see the rise of new wealthy merchants and popularity of genre painting. Genre painting means scenes of everyday activity. So instead of Chinese style landscape, people can see the actual scenery of Korean landscape as well as everyday activities of Korean people. So these are Korean alphabets. Do you see the letter? Like it says G, Ki역, or Yeung, like the consonant of Korean. So there are 14 consonants. So it was invented by King Sejong. He was the 4th king of Korea, Joseon Dynasty. So he invented these characters. Farmers, women, less educated citizens, they were able to read some practical documents, such as agricultural manuals or writing letters to family members. So they learned other skills. So throughout the Joseon Dynasty, Korea maintained a diplomatic relationship with Japan, so that it was a surprise that Japanese people suddenly invaded Korea around 1592. It was unexpected. During their diplomatic relationship, they never had such a confrontation. So it came as a total surprise, and that was Joseon suffered from a massive destruction. A lot of artifacts that we studied in Goryeo Dynasty or even earlier, they were also taken away by Japanese or destroyed. The 5 palaces in the capital of Joseon Dynasty, they were also burnt down. But after the Imjin War, Korea and Japan restored their diplomatic relationship. So this is a 17th century Japanese painting showing us that Joseon envoys are visiting the Japanese military government. Okay, let me just move on to. So early Joseon Dynasty, the Goryeo Celadon, remember, like bluish green Goryeo Celadon, faded away. A lot of professional, skillful technicians, pottery artisans were confiscated or kidnapped, or they simply could not maintain their trade during the Mongol invasion. So in early Joseon dynasty, in each provinces, artisans developed a little more simplified form of stoneware called buncheong. It should be more like a B, like a buncheong ware. The foundation of the ceramic is this color of gray, but then they are going to put the white powder over the formulated pot, and then they are going to scratch out the shape, right? And then they are going to carve out the white pigments over here. So after that decorative layer, once you bake it, then you will have patterns in white color, and then you have that exposed the ground color of the original pottery. So these are incised lines. This is somewhat similar to sangam technique, but it's more like a scratch out the patterns. And then this one, so the color of gray is the foundation of the pottery itself, and then they put the white powder all over, and then they put the stamp. So this is a wooden mallet. So they put the stamp with these dots patterns, and then they repeated it throughout the pot. And then you bake it, and you have this type of patterns. So buncheong ceramic was popular in early Joseon dynasty, and Japanese collectors admired buncheong ware. They like this kind of casual or improvisational quality of decoration. So buncheong was very popular. So this is explaining to you that how the Korea Celadon sangam was created. It's a laborious, multi-level, precise techniques, but buncheong is a little bit more casual. And then, buncheong ware that you've seen earlier is going to be collected by this type of tea masters. In Japan, tea drinking became known among monks in Kamakura period, but it was never popular. Muromachi period, it started to be gradually known among upper level of society. And then Momoyama period, like Toyotomi Hideyoshi and other political leaders were avid followers of tea ceremony. So this man, Senno Rikyu, that you see in this portraiture, he was a tea master for Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and he emphasized the simpleness of tea ceremony. So room like this, tea chamber, very humble. You have exposed words. It's very small. It's head to head. So here he admired pottery like this to be used. So this is Japanese Momoyama period teacup, and then this is Joseon Dynasty buncheong ware. So they share the common aesthetics, more natural, casual, as if you scooped out of the clay and then have this very raw, as if it's not very well maintained. So that's the beauty of it. So Imjin War is something that you should remember. That is very important warfare in East Asia that changed history of Japan as well as the history of China. So Ming Dynasty eventually collapsed, and then Joseon Dynasty also went through rapid change. So before Imjin War, it's called early Joseon Dynasty, and then after Imjin War, it's called the late Joseon Dynasty. And then, so this is the map of invasion during the Imjin War. So blue shows Japanese people attacking. Red means Chinese Ming Dynasty sending their army to protect. And then, but we had a war hero who defeated many Japanese vessels in that southern coast. And his name is Naval Commander or Admiral Lee Sun-shin. If you go to the City Hall area of Seoul, this is a Gyeongbokgung Palace where King used to live. And then this blue roof is blue house where the president lives at the moment. Here you have King Sejong, who invented the Korean alphabet, and then you have Lee Sun-shin, who is a naval commander who invented that turtle boat. It looks like a turtle, a sea animal, turtle. And he effectively defended the coastlines so that Japanese people cannot land. So eventually, the Joseon dynasty was able to defend themselves. So this is a turtle boat. We used to have a tobacco brand called the Turtle Boat. Anyhow, the difference between the old wooden boat to turtle boat is the roof is covered with iron and iron nail so that soldiers cannot land on top of this boat. And then they installed a little bit more powerful cannons all around. So this is Joseon Dynasty's helmet from the 18th century. So if you come to the late Joseon Dynasty, Buncheong technique disappears, and now people focus on white porcelain. This is white porcelain with underglazed cobalt blue colors. So you have cobalt blue colors and then white body. So after Engine War, late Joseon ceramics are going to be blue and white porcelain. So this is a typical room of a well-to-do Yangban family. And if you go here, people usually sit down on here. So and then you can put that your porcelain over here. It was my alarm. You can put the porcelain here and other objects.